Today we will dive into a legendary battle in Eastern European history, the Battle of Grunwald in 1410. Before we get into this story, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any of our history videos. And now, let's step onto the battlefield. While all of Europe was bleeding over the Crusades fighting for Jerusalem, far to the north, another conquest quietly unfolded. No deserts, no sacred relics, only grey skies, frozen forests, and blood spilled on the white snow. The Baltic region, home to pagan tribes like the Prussians, Lithuanians, and Livonians, became the target of the Teutonic Knights, a Catholic military order from Germany. Clad in silver-white armour with a black cross on their chest, they saw themselves as warriors of God. But soon the world realized they were not just knights, they were also invaders. Under the banner of spreading Christianity, the Teutonic Order destroyed dozens of native tribes, burned villages, and built fortresses of stone and iron. They conquered the entire Baltic coastline and established a theocratic, military state, a steel empire where everything bowed to the sword and the cross. But when the blood reached the borders of Poland and Lithuania, the storm had already sown the seeds of its own downfall. To fight an empire of steel, a union forged in blood and honour is needed. In 1385, amid crisis and pressure from the Teutonic Knights, a historic decision was made. Jogaila, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, still a pagan at the time, agreed to convert to Catholicism and marry Queen Jadwiga of Poland, a girl only 12 years old but already a symbol of an entire dynasty. This marriage was more than a royal union. It was a strategic move that created one of the most powerful alliances of the Middle Ages, the Polish-Lithuanian Union. Jogaila ascended the Polish throne under the new name Władysław Jagiełło. From then on, two nations, once rivals who had shed blood over territorial disputes, stood side by side against a common enemy, the Teutonic Order. Yet the knights refused to sit still. They accused Lithuania's conversion of being false. They spread propaganda across Europe claiming Jagiełło was a disguised pagan and that Lithuania still worshipped forest gods and river spirits. With such rhetoric, they continued to receive aid, mercenaries, and above all, the support of Western powers. A full-scale war was only a matter of time. And when your enemy denies your faith, denies your honor, the sword becomes the final answer. Peace is a luxury, especially when the enemy's sword always looms at the edge of your territory. After the historic Polish-Lithuanian Union, all of Eastern Europe entered a tense era. Small clashes along the border erupted endlessly. The Teutonic Order, in their fanaticism and arrogance, began destroying towns, plundering villages, and provoking the allied armies. For their part, Władysław Jagiełło and Vytautas, Grand Duke of Lithuania, and the king's cousin, understood that war was inevitable, and if war was to come, it had to be a decisive battle. No more skirmishes or border raids, but a total offensive, where the stronger side would dominate the entire eastern Baltic region. Throughout 1409, both sides prepared for the largest war in the history of this land. Poland and Lithuania mobilized. Troops recruited militias from the farthest regions, forged armor, sharpened swords, and repaired marching roads. Meanwhile, The Teutonic Order, wealthy and well-connected with the West, hired thousands of mercenaries from Germany, France, and Switzerland, many of them veteran swordsmen who had fought in Italy, Castile, and Burgundy. One side represented the unity of two great nations. The other was the last bastion of the Catholic Knights of Northern Europe. Both believed they were fighting for justice. Both believed God was on their side. And amid all these beliefs, amid all the shining swords, one question hung in the air. Among the warriors, who will survive? June 1410. The wind blows from the Mazovia plains, carrying the scent of metal and sweat. It is campaign season, and this time neither side thinks of turning back. Władysław Jagiełło, as King of Poland, together with Grand Duke Vytautas of Lithuania, commanded a massive allied army estimated at over 35,000 soldiers, including heavy cavalry from Poland, light cavalry from Lithuania and the Tatars, local infantry, and also troops from Czech lands, Moravia, Ruthenia, along with knightly contingents from Hungary and Transylvania. From Krakow, the army marched north, passing dense forests, crossing the Narew River and the marshy lands south of Prussia. Jagiełło, who had learned military strategy from his father-in-law, moved slowly but very cautiously. He repeatedly changed marching directions to deceive the enemy, until suddenly turning northwards, aiming straight for the heart of the Teutonic Order's power, Malbork. On the opposing side, Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen, supreme leader of the Teutonic Order, was not easily caught off guard. With about 27,000 troops, fewer in number, but with elite knights in heavy armour, mercenaries from the Rhine region, France and Switzerland, and knights of the Order, warriors forged in blood and scripture. Ulrich decided not to wait behind walls, but to intercept the allied army early, choosing a position near the village of Grunwald, an open plain suitable for cavalry charges and encirclement. On July 15, 1410, the two great armies arrayed themselves facing each other under the scorching sun. No retreat, no diplomacy, no religion to mask greed, only steel, land, and blood. A battle to decide the fate of all Eastern Europe had begun. At dawn, Ulrich von Jungingen positioned his forces first, setting camp and arranging formations on the offensive. The Teutonic army was divided into two wings, the left wing led by knights from the western provinces. The right wing was the Order's regulars, thousands of heavily armoured knights, their elite force. The Polish-Lithuanian coalition arranged opposite. On the right flank, light cavalry from Lithuania, Ruthenia, and the Tatars under Vytautas. On the left, the main Polish force, heavy cavalry of the nobility and allies from Silesia and Hungary. The centre consisted of mixed troops under the white and red banner of Poland, where King Władysław Jagiełło commanded the battle carefully, from a position just behind the lines. The attack began with the Lithuanian cavalry charging wildly, striking the left flank of the Teutonic forces. But they were immediately stopped by a solid defence of German knights. The battlefield descended into chaos. Tatar horsemen launched rockets, but the fully armoured knights stood like moving iron walls. Amid a rain of spears and arrows, the Lithuanian troops began to retreat, appearing at first like a rout. The Teutonic Knights cheered, believing they had the upper hand, but no, it was a feint. Vytautas, a seasoned nomadic general, pretended to retreat to lure the enemy away from their center. When the Teutonic forces pursued the Lithuanians, the Polish left wing under the Knights of Sandomierz, Krakow and Poznan launched a fierce counterattack. Heavy cavalry charges crashed like waves of steel sweeping across the field. The Teutonic center began to falter. Their great banner, a black cross on white, was pushed back again and again. Feeling the tide turning, Ulrich personally led his guard into the fray. That was the fateful moment. In the melee, Ulrich von Jungingen was killed. Legend says he refused to flee, choosing death in battle as a true knight. His death shattered the morale of the Teutonic forces. The Order's banners fell one by one. Surviving knights were either captured or fled to the Malbork fortress. Over 200 Teutonic knights died, thousands were captured, an irreparable loss. The Polish-Lithuanian alliance, though suffering heavy casualties, achieved the greatest victory in medieval Eastern European history. This resounding triumph did not immediately end the Teutonic Order's existence, but it shattered the aura of invincibility the Order had worn. Ulrich von Jungingen was dead. Nearly the entire military elite of the Order was wiped out. The Allied army had a chance to march directly on Malbork, the Order's capital, but due to many factors, weak logistics, widespread disease, and the long campaign season, Jagiełło could not end the war with a single strike. The Teutonic Order, holding on with its remnants, survived tenuously, but was no longer the threat it once was. Later they were forced to sign the Treaty of Thorn in 1411, ceding much territory and influence. With Grunwald, the Polish-Lithuanian Union rose as a dominant power in Eastern and Central Europe. It marked the transformation of two nations once deemed barbarians by the West into key shapers of the continent's history. As for the Teutonic Order, the symbol of the Eastern Crusade, after Grunwald they gradually shifted from a military force to a purely administrative and religious organization, and in the centuries that followed, the name Teutonic slowly disappeared from Europe's political map. Grunwald was more than a battle. It was a symbol of resistance, unity, of will and rising from darkness. More than 600 years have passed, but whenever the wind blows over that land, people still hear the hoofbeats, the bugle calls, and the cheers of victory. That is Grunwald, an immortal declaration carved in earth, blood, and the hearts of Eastern Europeans. And that brings our story today to an end. Thank you all for watching this video.